So Summer's Games Fest is just wrapped up, and I want to take some time to go over the winners and the losers of this event. Mostly because I think it'd be fun too. And overall, this was a pretty S-tier event. Capcom came out with updates to Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter Wilds is basically getting its Iceborne update in Ascended. They're going to be adding Elder Dragons, new areas, probably new items, equipment. Street Fighter VI just wrapped up Season 3, and right into Season 4 they've announced all the characters, including Tifa from Final Fantasy. Capcom announced their newest Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Veronica, a game that people have been speculating that Capcom might come back to, and it's finally here. It's just so amazing how they can get right back into it after Pragmata and Resident Evil released this year, and they're still bringing out hits, basically. Almost nobody is delivering as much as Capcom is right now. They're basically unstoppable, it feels like. We got Alien Isolation, the long-awaited sequel. I wouldn't even say cult classic, the just insanely popular sci-fi horror game that Sega never made a sequel to, never came back. I guess they declared it a game that sold below expectations. Don't know how that works, but I don't work in the game industry. But we're finally getting a sequel to it. Better late than never, I guess. Updates to other games that I like Pal World. It's getting its 1.0 update. We're going to finally be able to go to that big tree. We're going to finally have more pals to fight, catch, eat, enslave, whatever you feel like. Wuthering Waves is getting an update, crossover with Cyberpunk. Have plenty of new Chinese Romance of the Three Kingdoms feeling games. I think one was called... Alright, so one was called Blood Messenger and one was called Sword of Legends. I had to go back and actually look them up because I could not remember them. They looked kind of interesting, very Neo-ish, Wu Chang Falling Dynasty, Wukong, we've been getting a lot of these, and they look kind of interesting. The new Stellar Blade game looked awesome. I didn't play the first one, I'll have to try that one. Great indie titles like MDHR are coming out with an 8-bit game and a sequel to Cuphead. A sequel to the sequel, I guess. A sequel to the DLC? They're making more games, basically. The makers of Cuphead. They announced some new MMOs like Guild Wars and I think Aeon 2, which is probably an MMO type game. Not really my thing, but it looked okay, I think. The new Virtua Fighter that was announced, Virtua Fighter Crossroads. I'm not sure if it's going to be like Street Fighter 6, where it's a fighting game with open world elements and modes, or if it's going to just be like a Shenmue type game. But a new Virtua Fighter is great. Overall, there was nothing at the Game Awards that I could overtly think of as an obvious loser, like a bad idea that we're all going to be making fun of, a $1 million disaster. There were some games I was more skeptical of, like the creator of The Last Guardian and Shadow of the Colossus, Ico. They were making a game that I'm not sure how it'll do, mostly because I'm just not really sure what the game's even about or how it'll play. I didn't really think about it that much before, but I guess that's just how these Game Award shows or early game showings go sometimes. The things that are shown are just too vague to kind of come to a conclusion on. And with no obvious disaster, even Ubisoft managed not to mess things up. They just showed Assassin's Creed Black Flag and nothing else. But that's kind of boring. Everybody likes a big flop to make fun of. I mean, I'm sure the people making it don't, but that's the nature of doing business. And with that being said, we're going to go back to Sony's State of Play a week ago and address two games. One that's gone incredibly wrong, and another that's gone, we'll say it's divisive at best. And first up is Sony's live service game Marathon. On the bright side, this game's actually managed to maintain a player base and even managed to bring people back with its newest update. But on the downside, if you look at this game from pretty much every other angle, it has failed to do as well as it needs to for a live service game of its scope and budget. if you're Sony and you buy Bungie for $4 billion, you don't want them to release a game to a smaller audience than any of their previous games. And currently this game is still doing worse than any of the games it's competing with. Out of curiosity, I wanted to look up Bungie's net worth, but I think that's not available anymore because Bungie was bought by Sony, and the only things that really came up were the fact that Destiny 2 and Marathon have missed their revenue targets, and Marathon's impairment, or Bungie's impairment losses, which are around like $760 million, which is more like their stocks have fallen by 765th, or they're no longer worth that much in the market. Either way, it doesn't feel like there is a large amount of people waiting for Marathon to turn it around or some sort of update that's going to bring them back. I think people are mostly talking about how they're waiting for Marathon to die, so Bungie will make Destiny 3. Either way, I don't see any situation in which Bungie turns this around and makes Marathon a profitable product. Last but not least, we have God of War Lafay. Or Laffy. I'm not 100% sure how this is supposed to be pronounced. And although I'm not really a God of War fan, I have to ask, is this really worth it? Anytime that you take a long-established character franchise and you gender swap the main character, I don't have a single example of where that's actually helped sales in the end. I guess Ciri from The Witcher 4 makes sense, but that's because she was kind of set up for a long time. But even in cases like Devil May Cry and the DMC Dino, people didn't take very well to the main character just being changed suddenly. Maybe they really do it all just for like the shock reaction. Because whenever something like this does happen, people make some really funny memes online. It is incredible to see what people do. I enjoy it a lot. So maybe it's really all for us, the fans. Or the public. It can't possibly be for the sales. I don't believe that for a second. But a God of War game starring Kratos' wife, you change the main character, obviously, because it's Kratos' wife. You change how the combat works. You change the tone by adding in Marvel-esque sidekicks in Frank the Cube and the ribbon swords. And you change the setting. It's no longer Greek mythology or Norse mythology, it's the afterlife of all gods. So it's completely different from God of War. Why is this even called God of War anymore? I'm asking a rhetorical question. I know why it's called God of War. Because if this game was called Lafay the Goddess, it would not... I 100% know that it would not sell as well as if it was called God of War Lafay. That being said, I still think it's going to sell worse than if it was just another Kratos God of War game, or even a God of War game starring Atreus, character who was previously in the series and who would make more sense to make the next game based off of. And so now you make a game starring Kratos' wife. Well, I think that the best things that you could do is to hold nothing back, and I think the combat's passable. I don't think it's great. I think that she could be way more aggressive, way more ruthless, way more intense with it, but it's okay. And her outfit, the way that she looks, I think she looks really boring. I think she looks like a suburban housewife in a generic fantasy garb. I don't know why she doesn't have a distinctive armor set or just better looking outfit in general. It's an odd choice for your main character. There's actually an even easier way that you could make the game more appealing to people, and that's people are way more willing to spend time and money on a game when you have a main character that looks attractive. So you could just make Lafay look more attractive. That being said, some people might say that's inappropriate, they shouldn't have to do something like that, and yeah, you're right, they don't have to do that. But it doesn't really make what I'm saying any less true in terms of making a game look appealing. Or just getting more people to buy a game, I should say. Kinda like it's also true that the majority of people who would want to play an action RPG like God of War are probably guys who would rather be playing as Kratos, or even a character like Eve from Stellar Blade, than Lafay. I wouldn't say that that's their first choice of the type of character they want to play as. But we've got to work with what we got, and Western game studios seem to want to put themselves at some sort of disadvantage. You can either look at this example or pretty much any game released by a Western studio in the past few years. Regardless, I don't think LeFay is going to do badly. The game's setting is pretty interesting, an afterlife of all the gods. Despite the unnecessary character switch and the weird side characters that may be annoying comic relief, besides those things, I don't see anything that's too damaging. With that being said, we're just about wrapped up here. I've gone over everything that I wanted to go over that happened in the past few days. This video was kind of fun to make, and if something came out that you're looking forward to, then I hope you get what you want. If not, better luck next time. Or, maybe you can complain about it online or something, whatever makes you happy. And I think that's a good place to stop.